what food does the Hulk eat? And it says baked beans. In fact, Hulk Hogan loves the food so intensely that when a fisherman offered him some seafood, the Hulk lost his mind. It's baked beans or nothing.
Welcome to the Rewatchers in the boat. We watched Life of Pi this week, and I was the tiger, and everyone else was lions and little Indian boys. So these are my co-hosts.
Gwen Hammer.
Justin Hammer.
Tyler Harris.
Tyler McKinley.
Katie McKinley.
Wow, that was beautiful, guys. We are really growing right around the table, the virtual Zoom table.
Does for you, right?
Well, we didn't want to commit to those 30 seconds before the last month, okay?
Imagine if we planned the rest of the podcast, how good this show could be.
What's a segment, Tyler? What is in a segment? All right. Like I said, this week we watched Life of Pi, based on a book. I think that's important. You know, it's a famous literary thing. Anyway, it was good, but if you didn't watch it, don't worry, I did, and I'm going to fill you in on every single thing that happened. Giraffe, sloth, bird, flamingo, I guess I should have just said zoo. Two guys give exposition. A father throws his child into the pool. Lead character's dad names him after his swimming pool fetish. He gets bullied for it and turns it into a dope nickname and skills. Back as an adult, he's going to tell his story to an author. Pissing's parents own a hotel and a zoo. Krishna had the whole universe in her mouth. A priest and a little boy keep it PG. Pi has religious questions. He's trying to be Hindu, Catholic, and Muslim at the same time. He's faith fluid. Papa no like it. Pi and his brother want to meet a new tiger named Richard Parker. Pi and Richard have a moment till Papa comes to break it up and teach Pi a lesson. Richard wrecks Bambi for some PTSD for Pi. Facts, fractions, French. No idea what that note means. Pi is older and trying to put the balls in Bollywood. He does not have any game, but Pi takes his new boo to Richard Parker. She looks as CGI as the tiger. Obligatory Tiger King reference. They have to sell to the zoo. Is this a prequel to the film We Bought a Zoo? Nandi gives Pi a friendship bracelet as he sails away. Sorry, bro. The French-Canadian lunch lady is a racist. Shipwreck, zebra, Pi. They're all on a lifeboat. Richard Parker joins them, but then he's gone and a hyena was hiding underneath. I hope Whoopi Goldberg does the voicing. Now an orangutan is there too. Hyena kills zebra. Richard Parker was hiding the whole time, and he kills the hyena. Pi makes a bad side raft and reads How to Survive on a Raft, the book. Handy dandy. Pacine marks his territory, but Richard Parker doesn't care about his pea spot. Both of them attempt to fish. Pi steals the boat and can't kill Richard. He gives the boat back after building a little better raft. Pi beats a fish and apologizes to it. A jellyfish light show. A whale. Man overboard. A flying fish storm. Pi intimidates Dick Parker to get the big fish, which he eats raw. Pi Exotic starts training Dickie P. Then he builds a fancy hammock bed and shade. Hallucinations, big storm. Pi yells at God, detarps and tarps again. Raft is destroyed. Pi pets Peter and they cuddle. He's ready to die. But then he finds land and eats whatever is on the ground right in front of his face. But it turns out it's just a giant lemur party with a hot tub. Richard is here too. Pi has a treehouse cuddle puddle semi-orgy with the lemurs, finds some plants from Pandora, and then figures out the island wants to eat him. So he goes back to the sea and finds Mexico really quickly. Richard Parker dipped out into the jungle, and humans find Pi. Old Pi vents his regret and love for Richard. The shipping company interviews him as the lone survivor, and they don't believe his story, so he subs the story of more survivors. Heartbreak, carnivorous animal metaphors. Author man is healthily skeptical, but down to write it. So is this a true story?
Yeah.
Once
100%.
they were on the boat, I only needed one word to describe things. It's like storm, hallucinations, it was just kind of it's like your regular journey arc, but a little bit more boring.
Oh my god.
Oh wait, are we done with the summary, or are we still? You're still going?
Yeah,
Okay, sorry.
that was
wasn't
kind
sure
of
if
a postscript. Okay,
you're just thrown into a stream of consciousness after you finished the movie, and it just is still going to this day.
it's
You
been
thought
on my
it was
mind.
boring?
I did not. Oh
Yeah,
no.
let's talk to who picked this movie this week.
So,
Gwen, how do you feel about Mitchell's
but-
comments?
But more so, Gwen, why did you choose this? And also, why am I wrong? Why were you so enthralled through? Like, there's a lot of people spend a lot of time on a boat movies, and they're all good, but they all have boring parts. It really hits sometimes. Okay.
Like what parts? I was so enthralled through the whole thing every time. Okay. So I read the book first. I'm sure you guys are shocked and appalled. But yeah, I read it when I was 13 or 14, and then I watched it when the movie came out. And I don't subscribe to the belief that a movie has to be completely accurate to what the book was in order to be a good movie. But I felt like this movie was, and it was so beautiful and well done that it was like watching the book. And I loved the survival aspects because I loved that as a kid, and I loved it at the time, I loved it for its faith positivity and the idea of using stories to navigate trauma and life events. And I just loved the whole thing. And I was kind of shocked to discover on Reddit today that people didn't like it. And now I'm learning that Mitchell thought it was boring, and I'm reeling.
Well, but Mitchell doesn't know
Whoa,
that they weren't lemurs.
Oh, I heard this afterwards. They refer to him as something else, but it's all the same.
No, they're definitely not lemurs.
I
Have
know.
you never seen Zaboomafoo?
Okay, I have no idea what the hell Sabumafu is.
Oh, well, I was.
Well, there's Mitchell's whole problem. If he doesn't know Zaboomafoo, how the hell is he going to get Life of Pi?
No.
Yeah.
First of all,
Yeah,
I
that's the
thought
missing link.
the movie was well made and it was beautiful. And I'm not saying it was bad or I didn't enjoy it, but I got bored in moments. But I get bored in the middle of Transformers 3 during the last robot orgy, okay? Like, it's fine.
No, I get what you're saying.
Gwen, were there any important differences between how it was told as a film versus a book, or anything that kind of happened different that might be interesting?
The only difference that I remember is that in the book, Pi very much invites Richard Parker onto the lifeboat without realizing what he's doing, and then jumps off. Whereas in the movie, he sees something in the water and invites it onto the boat without first realizing that it's Richard Parker. And given the metaphor, I think that's a large difference, but that's all I remember as being different.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Yeah, any other did anyone else watch this for the first time? I think I read the book when I was a kid, but I hadn't seen the movie except for like 30 minutes in a car shop once. Did anyone else watch it for the first time that wanted to kind of give their reaction?
This was,
I guess we've all seen it.
yeah, I think this was like my third time seeing it, possibly. So, yeah.
This was my second time, but my first time on a screen bigger than my phone.
Oh, yeah, it's a pretty movie to watch on a bigger screen.
I watched
this
it
movie
on the way to
your
Japan.
fucking phone.
Bitch slap yourself in the name of David Lynch.
But yeah, my first biases going into this movie were my history of animation professor being very upset that it won for best cinematography. Which I find that I have also come to have those same feelings. Because so much of the movie is computer generated and done by an art team.
Yeah,
I feel like that's a production award that should be won over a cinematography award. Because cinematography is not bad. It's just when all you have to do is place your only live thing in the foreground on the third, the art department can make that look like magic by adding stuff in post. But is that really great cinematography? I don't know.
there's some really beautiful shots of this tiger that look insanely real, but there's also some movement shots and other things that look terrible, or just maybe our CGI has come a long way, so it just looked terrible in that moment. So
I think didn't they use like a mix of like live action recorded shots with CGI for the tiger?
I think so, because this honestly, like Mitchell said, it looks bad, and like I mean, there's parts where it like doesn't look real, but for the time, this looked really good.
Oh, I still think the tiger looks fantastic in a lot of different shots and movement, but I think there are other elements, like you said, it's entirely faked, which is pretty stunning. But when there is a weak spot now, like we kind of see it. But I know that they did that live animal thing various times, including like those Planet of the Apes movies, which look great. And more recently, of course, Lion King. So they, of course, must have. I wonder how much they're able to digitally overlay that. But it was well done, because the lion has to, or the tiger, sorry, has to show emotion.
Yeah, I guess let's talk. I mean, since we're talking about, I say we talk about some production things before we get into the more narrative side of things, I guess. I want to know what everyone's take is on the visual style of this film, because I have conflicting feelings on it. I am very much. I get why they chose to go with the incredible saturation and visual style which they did, and it makes a lot of sense based on the reveal at the end. However, on my first view through, I remember, and even on this view through, I felt a little disconnected. Like, I never fully could buy into thinking everything was at face value real, I guess, or actually happening the way it was being shown to me. And so that, I don't know, but I think it's a cool decision to make based on what that actually is. But I also think there was a disconnect for me. I don't know if any of you guys have thoughts on that even, or how you felt about it.
I kind of feel the same way, but I think because I don't hate the visual look of this movie. I think there's some really gorgeous stuff. Excuse me, but I think the thing for me is because the book exists, and I remember reading the book and it feeling like such a Gwen mentioned like the survival elements of that, and it makes that feel so grounded and real, and it like commits that so hard that like the more transcendent elements kind of just came for me through the realer moments in the book. And so in this, it feels a little more like on the nose in moments for me, where it maybe doesn't pack the punch that it did in the book. But that being said, had I not read the book, I don't know that I would feel that way. You know what I mean? Because there are a lot of moments that I like, and there's a lot of like really great kind of incredible and like awe-inspiring shots. But I can't say for sure whether they would work for me had I not read the book. I don't know. But yeah, I totally, like, I get what you're saying. I'm in that same little tiny boat out in the middle of the ocean with you, I think, as far as like some of those choices. But it is a big choice, which if you're going to make a big choice, that's cool. So yeah. I definitely, it's not something I hate, but yeah, it wasn't like maybe my favorite part of the movie for sure.
One of the things that IMDb mentioned was an aspect ratio change. Was that the part where the fish were like out of the frame all of a sudden?
There's a couple of them. There's that one specifically, which kind of adds like that pseudo 3D effect with the fish going outside of the frame, and then there's another shot where it's more of a I don't know what the aspect ratio is, but it's more of like a square looking shot. And I can't remember what scene that is specifically, but there are a few aspect ratio changes throughout the movie.
Did they do that because it was shown in theaters in 3D? Because when I first saw it, it was 3D in a theater on a really terrible first date. So is that why, or were there other decisions to change the aspect ratio?
I'm sure that initial decision was made because of the 3D, but yeah, it's weird that got like carried forward into like home video releases and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know, but that is a really interesting question, because that is a bizarre thing to do. So
Have we seen the guy who plays Pi in anything else since this movie? I mean, I guess old or young. I don't feel like I've seen either of them.
I looked at both of them, and they haven't really been in much.
Irfan Khan is in who's the older Pi. He's in like a handful of stuff, usually smaller roles. But yeah,
Everything. Anytime a movie has the Richard Parker character, he is like contractually obligated to be in there.
Yes, exactly.
Or the Dickie P, as he was so aptly put in the summary.
Oh, he's the evil doctor, or one of the evil doctors in Jurassic World, and because I was like, I know I recognize this dude, and he's in Slumdog Millionaire as well. But otherwise,
Yeah.
he's got a pretty good. I mean, he works a lot, and he has a huge mixture of American films, Japanese films, and Bollywood films, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've seen the younger Pi in anything else. Yeah, I don't know.
He doesn't even have a picture on IMDb. What is this?
He didn't. Well, here's the thing about the actor who played young Pi. After this movie, to make sure that it landed and had the weight that he felt it needed, he decided to retire from acting and never leave his home again, so that people literally did think he actually did that, and then just disappeared or was, translated into the heavens. I don't know, but I don't know what exactly he was hoping for. But
According
was
to Wikipedia, he received the MTV Movie Award for Best Scared as Shit Performance in 2013. I'm assuming.
Oh, the most coveted.
Yeah.
Oh,
Man, another super weird choice in this movie that I think is a choice is his kind of like adoptive uncle who is the swimmer. That man doesn't look like a real person. Was he like computer enhanced?
there
Well,
were
he
a few
talks
people.
about his name's like Mama G or something.
Yeah.
He talks about him having like strangely broad shoulders and narrow hips, which made him a really good swimmer. So I think it was on purpose because he talks about it being exaggerated in.
Gotcha. So it's like because he exaggerates all his stories and like tweaks them and embellishes them a bit, he like embellished the visuals of the uncle.
Right.
Yeah. That one was really off-putting to me. His like I don't know what it is. It's not just his shoulders. There's something. It's like in Revenge of the Sith when the clones take off their helmets and their heads are just kind of like struggling to keep up with those computer animated bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like that.
Yeah, there's so much visual and so much post visual that goes into this. Like, some of the things are going to look odd, but I did feel like some of those moments on the boat or him in the water especially are super grounded. Whereas when we get those wide shots with a lot of horizon, obviously they have to be digital, but even if they kind of are overcolored and hued, I almost think it brings back like the vivid memory of his experience and how he probably was, that hungry and dehydrated, pretty delirious. So I kind of like some of the choices in there that are still stunning and still fit the moment, but they feel like they could be part of his experience and this story that he now tells.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think, like, for me, a lot of this, like the way that we see the story unfold, we're seeing something that happened in the past, and we're seeing like somebody remembering something. Like, this is a story that's being told from somebody's memory, and obviously, like the reveal at the end of the movie where these events are more of a symbol for what he went through. Like the visual aspects to this story doesn't really bother me that much in that regard, because it is, to me, it's supposed to be like this kind of fantastic dreamlike sort of thing, because that's what happened in his mind. Yeah, so as he's telling the story, we're seeing something that he's remembering.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all in. We're all in Pie's head. So we kind of see him go through obstacle after obstacle, and his relationship evolve with the tiger. Did you guys have any moment where it did kind of have more emotional effect for you, as far as his frustration or his success in that relationship and finding safety? It's, I don't know. You kind of know he's gonna live. That's what's hard for me about this and Castaway. Like, the first time, it's great because you don't know what's gonna happen, and then after that, it's like, I know where we're going with this. It better be entertaining to watch this kid do his thing. So, do any moments stick out to you guys from his lonely time?
I think the second storm, when Pi is looking up into the sky and seeing the face of God and sort of reveling in the experience, and Richard Parker is just miserable and afraid, and seeing Richard Parker as the more base and violent part of Pi's nature, and just thinking about how that part of him is having a hard time seeing the face of God in that moment, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
I thought that was striking.
I thought the actor did an awesome job in that scene. Like, I felt like he really sold it, and it was super, like, you felt it as you were watching it, and just how hard it would be and what a sucky situation. And then you felt bad for the poor Richard Parker.
I know. I was rooting for the human pretty hard, so I was kind of like, dude, you got to let this tiger die. But I knew where his heart was headed, and it did. It was the better outcome. But I don't know. I'm a weak person. If I had the chance to kill a tiger and assure he wasn't going to kill me, I don't know. I don't know what I'd do.
Yeah, but Pi said that it was Richard Parker who was keeping him alive. He couldn't let Richard Parker go, because then he would have died too.
You tell yourself some things, you know.
Exactly.
I mean, he's saying that with the knowledge that of what Richard Parker actually is versus what we as the audience are supposed to believe he is throughout this movie.
Right.
So I definitely think that's true in the fact that it was who kept him alive. But I definitely felt like, from a survival standpoint, that whole time, I'm like, the moment where he doesn't kill him with the axe, I'm like, dude, you fucking just, I mean, you just got to kill it, because that thing has literally been trying to kill you.
But does that not make the ending better and make more sense? And then you look back and go, oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
I think in the moment, I was like, just thinking pure survival. What would I do in that situation? But I think as a story point, yeah, it definitely works a whole lot better to have it play out as it did.
Well, Pi does all sorts of dumb things as far as survival goes. Like, he doesn't pick up any of the bananas. He just gets the net. And then, like, what was the other thing? He spills, when he first eats a cracker, he spills like half of it, which makes me so angry. So he did a lot of things that were kind of dumb.
Something I was thinking about, I know, like, Mitchell, you mentioned, like, you said something about, like, I know what's going to happen at the end of this movie, so how am I going to be entertained watching it this time? Like, this movie for me has actually become more entertaining with each rewatch, because at each time I've watched it, I've been at a different stage in my life with my spirituality, religiosity, is that how you say that? I don't know. But anyways,
sauce.
yeah, exactly. And so specifically, like, I just wanted to point out, like, the moment where he does not end up killing Richard Parker, and there's the comments about Richard Parker is the one who kept him alive and everything. Like, I had the thought this time about, like, this almost represents, like, an attempted suicide, possibly, at some point in all of this. We learn at the end about all of this horrible shit that he went through, and if we take some of the events that we see a little bit more literally with what the tiger is doing to the other animals who also represent people on the boat, there's a lot of really dark, deep, terrible things that are going on. Did he eat part of his mom did I guess at the end he says that the cook threw her overboard, so maybe not, but cannibalism is a theme.
He did
Yeah.
say that he did to the cook's body what the cook did to the sailor's body.
Right.
So
Yeah.
he did eat the cook.
Yeah. But anyways, I've got tons and tons of thoughts about the symbolism and everything for this movie. I bounced a bunch of stuff off of Gwen after we watched it earlier today because it really impacted me again today. Even more, I think. Well, maybe not, but yeah, this movie means a lot to me, and I'm glad that we watched it again this week.
Can we talk about the island? Because when I first, read the book and saw the movie, the island always felt really disjointed and out of place. And just like the author had something that he wanted to stick in and sort of shoehorn it in there. But this time around, I felt that it worked to sort of muddy the waters of a clear metaphor in a way that I really liked. So I'm curious to hear what everyone else thinks of that part.
Well, that was something I wanted to ask you, Gwen. It doesn't really, there's not like a clear definition like there is for everything else in the movie as far as what the island represents. Is that discussed in the book at all, or is that equally left just as ambiguous?
If I remember correctly, it talks as Pi leaves the island. It talks about how it looks like a man laying on his side, and in the movie, it's a little bit more stark that it's Vishnu in the ocean because Pi says, "Hang on, let me find it." I can't find it. Anyways, it's Vishnu. And so the idea that he's drawn to this island that represents God or spirituality or religion. And at first it gives him rest and nourishment, but then it turns out that it's carnivorous and dangerous and is eventually going to eat him. And he decides to leave, I think is extremely interesting and complicated from a character who has been nothing but devout and into his religion and into God. And so I think that reading of the island complicates things in a way that I appreciate because life is messy and interpretation of life is messy and faith is messy. And so I just appreciated it a lot more this time around.
Yeah, that's I think that reading on that is what stuck out to me the most this time. It actually reminded me of something like Silence, and especially like the kind of the end of I can't remember the character's name, but Andrew Garfield's life in Silence, like that whole the idea of beginning to think as religion is far less binary. I think can be really difficult, or I guess not religion, but faith itself, like an individual's faith is less binary. I think as someone who grew up very religious, like that's a very hard first step to take and to accept, I think, in yourself. And so to me, like, I think like you were saying, Gwen, like that to me stuck out a lot more this time. And was like, I don't know. It was like a really comforting part of that movie for me is like him being, seeing that he needed to act and then actually doing it and actually following through. Like I think that's a really great part of this movie. And I really, I enjoy your read on that for sure.
One of my favorite scenes every time I've experienced this story is Pi discovering Christ and just his absolute confusion. And it doesn't make sense that God would sacrifice himself for mortals and then falling in love with that God anyway. I just find it adorable and heartwarming in a way that I don't really understand anymore, but I just found myself smiling through that scene again, and I just love it.
Yeah, I think there is something refreshing about this movie's take on it, and how even though, like, I mean, with the island in particular, and a lot of things that are discussed in the main themes of this film, there's not a lot of direct pointed negativity towards religion as often as there are positive things, especially in the first half of this movie. I think the more critiques and stuff come in more subtle ways throughout the second half. But the idea of someone coming at it from a completely childlike, innocent state, to be able to find the good in those things and to be able to just come at it with that pure heart, I guess, is something a little more refreshing. And then the way it then goes into some heavier things it's a nice, smooth transition, and it builds up very, very well and masterfully, I feel like, as opposed to someone just because a lot of times when people have such strong opinions on this type of subject material, it just comes off as a lot of shouting and a lot of yelling and a lot of pouting. And it takes a real finesse and artistry to really take things that you are impassioned about and have really strong feelings about and be able to come at it in a way that feels, for lack of a better term, elegant, I should say.
Yeah, something that I really do not appreciate about online discourse and critique of religion is the complete dismissal of all the beautiful and positive things that come from religion. Like, I get it. When you've had a bad experience, you've had a bad experience. But can we acknowledge the beautiful things? And I appreciated the display of, even if it was a light touch, the beautiful things in spirituality and a love of God in this movie.
Yeah, I think, I mean, just at the beginning and how he's looking at three different faiths and finding value in them and finding value in something bigger than himself, regardless of specific identification. It brings a positivity, and there's some elements of the story that are really clear, but I think those that are left up to interpretation is a lot more how spirituality is successful for people, especially these days. I think when you really boil into it, an abstract form of looking at faith that asks you questions and brings you positivity, but not necessarily answers, I think that is a really good way to help people think about spirituality without getting into the discourse that ends up being toxic. It's just a really hard thing to have a productive conversation about through the internet. It's much better through art or through real human communication. And so, the film obviously sets up so many things that you can take from it and interpret. And I don't think for the most part it asks you to settle on anything. But I like its elements of hope the most. I think that is something that ought to be pretty universal.
Yeah, I think it's something that, like you pointed out, Mitchell, that it leaves it in a place that's more of an invitation to be introspective and to do some soul searching and think about these things, than telling you what to make that decision on or what to land on. I think that it does kind of, and maybe it's just because we watched it for me making that connection, but just that is kind of that similar connection with Pan's Labyrinth of the kind of the ending message, almost like kind of about those movies, or an interpretation you can take on them of that, the things that people, because at the end of Life of Pi, he's saying, here's one story, and then here's what really happened. Which is the better story? Which is the one we want to remember? Because they both are like had me ending up in the same place. And I think that both those movies kind of take that concept of life sucks and life is full of really hard, shitty things, and not to limit it to religion, but just the things people tell themselves or put faith in or hold on to make it through all these different hard times and to survive trauma, essentially, and be able to remember it and not go crazy.
Well, I think it's something that human beings do, period, not just religious people and not just people who experience trauma. When we go through hard times in our lives, even if they're not, being stuck in a lifeboat with a murderous cook, we, as we're going through them, talk ourselves through them and construct stories around them. And a word I hear a lot is reframing the narrative to give yourself more power in your own story. So I think it's a very human thing to do, not just a religious one, like you said.
That was actually one of the takes that I had from this rewatch this time. The first time that I watched the movie was at a time in my life where I had just really started to begin to kind of question my beliefs and open myself up to a more complex morality system than what I had previously had. And I watched this movie, and it provided a lot of comfort during that time. I had read the book previously, which also helped me out a lot at that time. Subsequent watch helped me with some other things that I was dealing with religion and whatever. The takeaway that I had from this rewatch today was sort of like I really appreciated kind of like what felt to me like a dive into or exploration of just human storytelling and the power that we have that throughout history, religion, just all of the stories that we tell each other to kind of make sense of everything, kind of like what Tyler was talking about, how terrible and horrible life can be, and yet we tell these stories to kind of make sense of things and to find the beauty in the shit that we go through. So I think it's interesting that there's a strength in the subject material, I think, of this movie. The Life of Pi as a book, I think, lends like this, it's spilling over into this movie, because we started out by talking about kind of the issues that we had or things that we saw wrong with kind of the movie Life of Pi, but the story itself, the subject material, is really strong. And yeah, I don't know where I'm going. I'm kind of rambling now, but I think that there's some really important things that are being told with this movie and with the story underneath.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to how good it is as an adaptation, that we can look at it as, hey, let's look at this story separate from whichever medium it was in, and how impactful it has been over several different viewings for people across them. And Justin, I like what you said about it being the way that we sometimes communicate in a, let's say, nonverbal, non-physical way, is through story and through the stories we consume and how we tell them. The interesting thing when you read more about psychology is how bad we actually are at remembering things, and how our memories have so many altercations. And it just makes you think, when you look at this movie, the spirit of a story, of something that touches your heart, can be so much more important. That's not, wow, it's got cheesy, but can be so much more important than where it came from or how perfect the recollection is. And so for him to have to speak of his experience like this, and for the story to still maintain that quality when we talk about different mediums, and the positivity that discussing a story like this would do for people who can take it down and see how it affects them at that level. Yeah, were there any other elements of the movie or the story that we kind of haven't delved into? Like I said, it was beautiful, and it's just so unique in the production and the CG / the whatever the cinematography was that it looked like. But was there any other elements of the movie you guys wanted to address?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, is Gemini Man's an Ang Lee? I don't know how to say his first name.
Ang,
Is
yeah.
Ang Lee. That's an Ang Lee movie, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Does it have any? I haven't seen it. I have no idea if it has any religious like overtones or themes or anything.
I think there's some significant undertone. People talk about what it's supposed to represent for Will and his younger self, but I don't believe it's religious in that way.
Okay,
I will definitely say it's not transcendent in any ways that Life of Pi is. I'll say that.
Okay, I'm just wondering because like we get Life of Pi, and then we have Silence, which is Ang Lee as well, right?
No,
it's
that's Scorsese. Yeah.
Oh my god!
You're-
Oh,
You're thinking Brokeback Mountain. Very similar film to
Yeah.
Silence.
for some reason I got that completely mixed up. So okay, well,
Yeah.
never mind then.
Yeah, I mean,
and
Ang Lee-
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's like obvious stuff there. Brokeback Mountain is the same way. I believe the movie that Ang Lee did before Gemini Man was Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, which is another. I think that's the name of it. That's probably somewhat incorrect. It's also based off a book and didn't do super well. But I feel like since Life of Pi, Ang Lee has been. I mean, Ang Lee has always been pretty experimental as far as like using technology in film. But that's like Gemini Man was shot at like 120 frames a second, and I know that. Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk was one of those things where it was like all shot at 60 frames a second, kind of in the midst of all that huge debate and rift between filmmakers as digital and film. And I don't know, it's interesting. I just feel like some of that stuff since Life of Pi, for me at least, has definitely not been as effective. And in some ways, I think a lot of that is because of those weirder production choices. Whereas I think Ang Lee is completely capable of telling some very powerful stories. But yeah, I don't know. It is an interesting. His career is really interesting for sure.
He's gonna go on that Soderbergh route where he just kind of decides to try shit, and Netflix is gonna give him the money for it. So
Yeah, probably.
maybe he didn't peak like Soderbergh did a few classics before he decided to jump in there.
What, you mean Unsane isn't Steven Soderbergh's best work? Is that what it's called? Unsane? Insane?
It is called Unsane.
Oh, okay, yeah. What
right?
a fucking nightmare.
Yeah,
I saw that. Yeah.
you might like. Did you see High Flying Bird?
I haven't seen that. No.
Okay. That's
No,
an
I
interesting
need to check that
Soderbergh
out.
one shot on an iPhone as well. But
Okay,
sorry,
that's
Justin. I
interesting.
interrupted you.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
There's a weird sort of meta thing in Life of Pi that I kind of wanted to mention. I was talking to Katie earlier about it today, of how there's a lot of like hints dropped throughout this whole story of like, and I still can't think of it. I struggled to think of it earlier and I can't think of it now. The best I can come up with is like false facts or something. I don't know. They point out one of the bananas not floating later on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you just happen to know that beforehand, you'd be like, well, that's a mess. Like things, but the problem is, and it's not any fault of the filmmakers or anything like that. It's just a weird thing. Is because it's a work of art or a work of fiction, whether it's a book or movie, if you knew those things and you saw them, you would think, oh, that's just an error. Someone didn't do their research. And so like I brushed all those things off that I noticed. I was just like, oh, it's just a movie, and then kind of threw them to the side. Where I'm interested if there's anyone who views that differently, who like hangs on to those things and is able to be like, that means this or whatever it may be. Because I certainly didn't the first time I watched it. It was very much like, oh, that's just human error.
I would have just believed the movie. I would have been like, oh, I've been wrong all these years about bananas. Like,
I would like to this day. I still want to go put a banana in like the bathtub and see if it floats. Like I have no idea. Does a banana actually float?
I'm pretty sure it doesn't.
It
Okay,
depends on the
well,
banana,
I
really.
just believe the movie, I guess.
yeah. Let's just say if you're gonna pick a fruit to float on, just grab a bundle of bananas and see what happens. We'll call it the Life of Pi challenge and put it on TikTok.
I will say there are plenty of bananas hanging out under the surface in Donkey Kong Country, and that game is all about bananas. So I assume that they did just mountains of research before doing that. So
whenever my Mario Kart slips on a banana and it flies into a lake, it does float. So maybe it's who knows? Who knows how much of the actual banana is still in that? But
Nintendo banana experts.
They definitely. I feel every little element like that was a telling element for me at the end to, compare his story when he gives the human version. But it's not something I looked into metaphorically, but I probably could have examined, and probably next time I watch this will examine things on another level. I mean, there was kind of the obvious emotional arc and everything that you could follow, but I wasn't looking for that stuff as much as I was still kind of in survival mode with a lot of my reactions.
So one thing I do want to talk about before we finish up is this movie was in kind of production hell for a very long time, because it got optioned almost. I think it was maybe optioned before the book was even actually released. It was like optioned off an advance copy or something. And they were trying to make it for a very long time, and lots of directors were attached to it. The name that stood out to me on the list of directors I saw was M. Night Shyamalan was attached to this movie for like 18 months or like almost 2 years, I think. And man, what a world we could be living in if we had an M. Night Shyamalan adaptation of Life of Pi. But yeah, I just think that's so interesting. You know, with all the stuff we talked about with Ang Lee, M. Night Shyamalan definitely has just as many defining quirks, I guess, as a filmmaker, and trying to place them within the confines of this story has given me a lot of joy over the last couple days.
I mean, there should probably be a Shyamalan remake of pretty much any film. I feel like that's a safe rule we could all enjoy and benefit from.
He should just start doing cover versions of films. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. That would be incredible. I'll have just like a wacky twist at the end.
Yeah. Oh man.
Well, he would have found a way to work in the reality versus animal twist, and but he would have like had humans crawl out of the skin or something. I don't know. Would have been fun.
Yeah, after he had left the island that's in the shape of a man, it would have stood up and walked away or something. I don't know.
Shyamalan's had a little bit more of a positive run with these the Split and the Glass movie. You know, maybe he'll do something good again. You know,
he was. I mean, he had me up until Glass, I think, and then Glass was not good. But yeah, before that, it seemed like he was making a comeback. But I mean, he's been doing a shit ton of production work and everything still. But yeah,
he had a little hard run there after Signs. Although I stand for The Village, nobody could really do anything for Lady in the Water or The Happening. So.
I want to meet someone who wants to defend The Happening, who wants to put the effort into defend that movie, because I just think they might be the most interesting person I would have ever met in my life.
I never saw The Happening, but I remember. I mean, obviously, I was in a different place mentally and filmography wise, but like I remember enjoying all of his movies the first time I saw them. And Lady in the Water was the last one I saw, I believe. No, that's a lie. Avatar: The Last Airbender was the last one I saw, and that was I definitely did not enjoy that one.
I had almost purged that from my memory.
I'm so sorry. I'm not even someone who like has watched the show, and I hated that movie.
I am.
It was real bad.
Yeah, it's bad.
Is that on Hulu right now or anything? I know it's coming to Netflix next on May 15th or something.
Are you going to put it as your guilty pleasure?
No, I have zero guilt about watching that. I need to think about my guilty pleasure a little harder. My guilty pleasure is a little too guilty, if you know. Okay, we're going to end that podcast here. No. But that's a good segue, Tyler. Coming up, we are going to be watching our favorite guilty pleasure movies next week, beginning with Tyler Harris's guilty pleasure, Hamlet 2. So brush up on your... Tyler, could you give us an elevator pitch for Hamlet 2 or like two movies it blends, you know?
Yeah, Hamlet and School of Rock.
I'm not mad at that. I thought you were going to say Fame.
No. I will say, yeah, just, I mean, after the last 4 or 5 episodes, next week will feel very different, I assume, as far as the discussion and where we go. goes. But yeah, Hamlet 2. We're actually Jessamine Svensson is going to be on as well, who was on when who introduced us to Porco Rosso a few months ago. But she introduced me to this movie last year, and she'd been telling me about it before, like for a while, and she finally let me borrow it. And I'm pretty sure I had her DVD for a week, and I watched it like 6 or 7 times.
Oh my!
And then I finally gave it back to her because halfway through the first time I was watching it, I just immediately ordered the DVD on Amazon because I knew I needed it in my life. But it is dumb. We are going to watch a very dumb movie, but it is. If you ever did theater in high school, Hamlet 2 is like made specifically for you, I feel like. And so, yeah.
Who's in it?
Steve Coogan is kind of the main guy. Sean Astin is also in it, which was like kind of before, who's the boyfriend from like Pitch Perfect. And I'm trying to remember some other movies, but anyways, he kind of had like a better run several years after this movie came out, but he is really great in this movie. Also, David Arquette and I can't remember his wife's name. Anyways, it's a bizarre and weird movie, and it'll be a lot of fun. Hopefully, I'll have a lot of fun watching it again.
I'm excited for it. I remember seeing things for it, and I was like, that would be one I could enjoy on a mindless night. It's on Stars if anyone is looking to find a stream for it. I feel like we've used our Stars free trial like 10 times.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, we'll find an easy way to watch it. But.
Is there a version of Hamlet we should watch prior to watching Hamlet 2?
I mean, here's the thing. No.
Okay.
The amount of things you need to know about Hamlet before going into this is next to nothing. If you're not familiar with Hamlet, it's not going to hurt you to get familiar with it just because it's really awesome.
Oh, are there references or?
I mean, there are, but they're not huge. You're not going to be missing out on chunks of story. They're more, I would term them probably Easter eggs.
Okay.
I do feel like I need to ask, what is in your mind the best film version of Hamlet?
I mean, I don't know that I love any of them. Mel Gibson's Hamlet is not bad.
I think that's the only one I've seen.
Yeah, that one's got some good stuff, but there's also some stuff I hate. I mean, Ian Holm is Polonius in that one, and he's really great. That movie's probably worth watching just for Ian Holm. But the rest of it is good. And there's some other really great performances in there as well. If you want to watch a really weird one, Ethan Hawke did a version of Hamlet that's set in the modern day. Okay, yeah, and it's especially dated now. Like it was like made at the tail end of like, I feel like a very specific set of years in the early 2000s, and it really feels like it. But it's fun and weird. Honestly, probably the best Hamlet to watch, just from like a traditional perspective, is the Laurence Olivier Hamlet from, I believe it's the 60s. I don't know. I can't remember exactly when, but that's kind of the classic, the more traditional presentation. And Laurence Olivier is just, I mean, he's kind of Hamlet in everyone's
48.
head. 48. Thank you. Yeah. Way older than I was thinking. But yeah,
there is a famous one from 69. Great. So
okay,
that's crazy.
That's probably why it stuck in my mind, was 69 too. So
the one from 48 is on the Criterion channel.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't kill yourselves trying to understand everything about Hamlet before we watch Hamlet 2. I promise there's going to be minimal spoilers. And honestly, if you're worried about spoilers for Hamlet, you've had time. You've had the time. I feel like we're past that point.
It's like the Final Fantasy VII of Shakespeare.
Oh.
I have never heard a better comparison. It's also the best Shakespeare play. So it's crazy. Yeah, it's perfect. But yeah, so we'll watch Hamlet 2. And I mean, honestly, probably a better prep for watching Hamlet 2 would be to watch like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure or something. Like it's almost closer to that. But yeah, anyway.
I was going to watch Lion King 1.5, but whatever.
Oh, the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead of Lion
Right,
King.
right. Tyler, can you let people know where they can reach us if they want to follow or communicate?
Yeah, you can email us at rewatchersonthe.pod@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter or Instagram at rewatcherspod.
Sweet. We're going to take a quick break and we'll come back with some fun recommendations. Welcome back to the Rewatchers on the Pod. Other than Life of Pi, we all watched a bunch of stuff this week. I'll start because I didn't really watch anything new. I kept going with Better Call Saul, and then I do just have to say the two best things that are releasing new stuff right now to me are What We Do in the Shadows, which is on FX, and then Dave, which just keeps getting better and better for me. This Wednesday's episode just made me so happy, and again, it's about Little Dicky, but he takes a really different approach to every story he decides to tell, and it's really enjoyable. Katie, do you want to kick us off? What do you want to recommend that you saw this week, or read, or listened to, or danced to?
I mean, I don't know if I'd recommend it, but I've been binge watching Mad Men, and it makes me feel sad.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so good.
I don't know if Don Draper doesn't get like seriously kicked in the crotch soon, I'm gonna be pissed.
Seriously kicked in the crotch.
He's a dick, pun intended. Like, I don't know. It makes me want to die inside, but I want to keep watching it because it's really cool. Like they
How
do that.
far are you?
I'm in season 3.
Okay.
Blown through it. I started watching it because I finished Handmaid's Tale, which is great. None of these make you feel good about women.
I
As
was
a
going to
woman,
say
you
you
just-
pick back-to-back doozies for
I
gender.
didn't know Elizabeth Moss was in Mad Men, and so she just popped up, and I was like, "Oh, how fortuitous! This is perfect." And then she gets treated like garbage in this too, and I'm just like, I don't know, but I'm gonna hold on because I have nothing else to do. But I just need to know that karma is going to show up for him because he sucks.
You can't turn into my mom. My mom can't if the main characters in a movie aren't making the moral choices she would make, she thinks it's a bad movie.
I mean, none of the characters are gonna be, they're not the Dalai Lama. But
yeah. I will say I can't say for certain that you're going to get what you want out of Mad Men if that's what you want. But I will say that by the end, the things Mad Men had to say and the way it said them made it one of my favorite shows. But yeah, I totally get it's hard. That was a show that took me a while to start just because of what happens in the pilot. Like when Peggy goes to the doctor in the pilot, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely goes some places that you're probably not expecting. So I don't know. Again, I can't say that means you're gonna like it. But yeah.
I mean, I've liked it. And I love the style of it. I feel like his character is so tired. Like it's season 3 and he's just been doing the same shit. I'm just like, can we progress or degress or something? Can we just move?
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm sure it will get better. Yeah.
I'm excited to hear what you think as you get a little further, for sure.
But yeah, I would definitely recommend Handmaid's Tale. You will hate men and religion when you're done with it, but it was phenomenal and beautiful.
Phenomenal. Tyler McKinley, what do you want to let us know about?
I finished Final Fantasy VII last night, the remake. And
Was it worth every penny for that 40 hours?
Here's the thing. I got feelings, and I feel. Here, I'll say first and foremost, if you're on the fence about playing this game, go ahead, get it. I enjoyed my time. It was fun. It has a lot of problems, and as someone who didn't play the original, I can still tell there's a lot of padding and a lot of time it's trying to kill to make it longer. It definitely has a villain problem. There's a good collection of villains, and all of them are super mustache twirly. There's no subtlety to them. They tell you their motivations. They tell you how they're feeling. There's no showing. And especially the main villain of the whole franchise, who, I mean, this as a standalone thing, I think, kind of fails on that end. I mean, like, even Marvel movies have better villains than this thing does. It's rough around the edges in a lot of spots, but the combat and the gameplay and a lot of the presentation things are so fun to get wrapped up in. And I didn't quite take as long as everyone said it was. I feel like I did everything too, but I took about 36 hours, I think, to beat it. And it was a fun 36 hours. I really enjoyed it. But I also had a lot of gripes with it. So it's a complicated issue for me. And the other thing is, I've just been watching The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary, and that could be a whole nostalgia thing. It might suck. I really love it, and I find that stuff fascinating, especially with some of the stuff is just like, whoa, like the Rodman episode aired today, and that one there's some stuff about him I didn't know, and I knew he was a wild guy. So it's just a crazy, insightful, and shocking look into something that I lived through and was following at the time. So that's really fun.
It is. I can tell you, as someone who just didn't care about basketball then, but is just such a big sports person now and loves those docs. Like, it is. I don't know if it needed to be 10 hours. I'm already feeling some fat that they could have cut, but like, it is. They're jumping between two timelines, and really, that footage that they got during that last season was incredible, and I think it's well done. So, Gwen, what do you got?
Well, I'm still re-listening to The Expanse because it comforts my soul, and Bobby is bae, and that's all I'll say about that.
But who's bae?
My bae.
Hey,
Hey
Sorry,
there.
Justin.
Whoa. What's going on here?
You know what? When you read it, you will understand, okay?
Oh.
Bobby is number one. So I'm also listening to The Blinding Knife by Brent Weeks, and it's number 2 in a series, and it's I'm still listening to it, so there's something. The premise is that there are people who can turn different colors of light into physical substance, and as a magic system, it's fine. So, no, whatever. But what I'm going to enthusiastically recommend is Shannon Hale's kids graphic novels, and Tyler Harris. I still haven't read that book yet, and I'm sorry. But Real Friends and Best Friends by Shannon Hale, we've been reading to May for the last few months, and they're just really great, and they cover all sorts of hard topics that I know I need to talk about with my kids, but I can't really bring up organically, like friends and being bullied and sibling rivalry, drawing healthy boundaries, body image, like all these things that really need to be talked about. They give me a fun, easy way to bring them up and discuss them with my kids, and they're really great. Having a hard time finding words for it. But yeah, I recommend those for, well, I mean, honestly, for everyone, but I just love Shannon Hale, but especially for kids. So yeah.
that's dope. It was so good. It left you speechless. Justin.
2 things. The first thing I just wanted to plug briefly, if you love video games and you like sports, you might be interested in professional StarCraft. This is something I don't think I've really ever mentioned this before. Like I play StarCraft, but I follow a couple different YouTube channels where they report on and kind of do like recasts of professional StarCraft games, and I really, really enjoy it. I follow the Rocket League scene a little bit, but I find StarCraft to be a bit more. I don't know. Well, they're different things. I would recommend checking out professional StarCraft. It takes a little bit of work to kind of understand how the game works and what's going on, and but it's one of those things where like the more you know about what's happening, the more rewarding it is, just because you're able to appreciate the skill level that is taking place while you're watching these games. So, yeah, if that's something you've ever thought about checking out, I'd definitely recommend that. The other thing, just real quick, I've spent the last couple weekends working on building planter boxes for my backyard, and I got that all wrapped up and finished this weekend, and it was hard and frustrating, but like I don't know if I've ever had like such a sense of accomplishment for doing something to better my own house like I've had for this. It's been really, really nice, and I'm looking forward to uh, enjoying some homemade salsa later this summer when everything
Ooh.
is good to go. So, yeah, I've kind of got like I don't know, it's so domestic, but it's been really cool and a lot of fun.
Seeing pictures of that, they look real good.
They look
do,
great.
Did a
yeah.
really good
You
job.
should see them in person from my kitchen window.
We creep on the hammers frequently.
How could you not?
With those planters, it's impossible to resist.
Oh man, Don Draper's rubbing off on you if you're judging people by their planters. Kid.
Tyler Harris, what are you going to recommend?
So I'm still playing Final Fantasy VII. I'm not quite there. For me, I understand what Tyler's talking about as far as maybe narrative shortcomings and things like that. For me, that game captures perfectly the spirit of Final Fantasy VII, which is very imperfect. But I am so incredibly up that game's ass for like 10 years now, or I remember the last time no, it's probably like 15 years. Jeez. Anyways, I'm still really loving that. I'm probably a couple hours away from finishing it. I haven't.
I do have a question for you on that.
Yeah.
That probably no one else is going to appreciate, but I've been curious. What sword are you running for Cloud?
So right now I just got the Mithril blade recently, so I've been using that one just to kind of until I get the proficiency. But then I always go back to the Buster Sword. Like it's honestly it's not the best equipped for certain things that you face in that game, but it's worth it to me just to see that sword on Cloud's back the entire time that I'm playing that game.
Yeah, for the whole finale, like I can't remember what it's called, the big red Japanese looking one that's like flat at the top.
Oh, the hard edge.
Yeah, I've been using that just because it deals the most damage. But then for the whole finale, I'm like, this game's easy as hell. I'm just gonna switch back to what looks the best.
Yeah.
So I've just used the Buster Sword for the whole finale. And
the Buster Sword's a classic. It's the Corvette of Final Fantasy VII. I'm gonna just spend my whole week doing comparisons like that. The other thing I started watching this week, and I don't know if this is as much a recommendation for this show or if it is for a podcast that birthed this show. But there's an animated show on Netflix called The Midnight Gospel that came out on 4/20, and it is created by Pendleton Ward and Duncan Trussell. Pendleton Ward also made Adventure Time, and Duncan Trussell is a podcaster / comedian who is very into bizarre spirituality and drugs and talking to people about their ideas on God and morality. Anyways, he's got a really great podcast called the Duncan Trussell Family Hour. And it's delightful. He is a really just warm and wonderful person who meets with all people from every walk of life and talks to them about stuff, and it's just a joy to listen to. The Midnight Gospel is basically taking pieces of that show, of him basically just having conversations with guests and animating an entire show around that. And basically they've written a couple scenes like that intro an episode, like basically writing intros and outros and maybe little moments to kind of tie what they're talking about to what's happening. But it's very much like this visual experiment. And it's really weird. And some of it is like gross and bizarre. But it's really fun. It's one of those shows. It's one of the few shows recently where it's like my phone remains untouched while I watch it, just because I'm being stimulated by this weird like conversation, and then the visuals are just very intriguing. Sometimes really good, sometimes just shockingly horrible. But yeah, I mean, I would just check out Duncan Trussell, I guess, is my biggest recommendation. And if you're into Duncan Trussell and his way of looking at stuff, check out the Midnight Gospel, because it's really, really bizarre and really interesting. But yeah, that's mainly what I've been doing this week. So that's it.
Coolio, Julio. Well, we hope our discussion tonight was so amazingly stimulating. This has been Mitchell Marshall along with
Gwen Hammer.
Justin Hammer.
Tyler Harris.
Tyler McKinley.
And Katie McKinley.
Sweet. Thanks for being on with us, Katie. Next week we're going to crush some Hamlet too, but thanks for listening. Bye.